A very warm welcome to our teaching for the parish evangelization cells, and I think this is going to be the penultimate teaching before the Christmas holidays. And as you probably know, or many of you know, last week I was in Milan attending the conference for all promoters for the parish evangelization cells. It was a 3-day conference, and my inspiration got it there. The theme I have chosen is Advent. And why I have chosen Advent? I don't know how many of you know, the Catholic Church consists of 24 rites, the largest, the biggest being the Latin or Western rite. And in the Diocese of Milan, which used to be the biggest diocese in the Catholic Church, and also has always been considered as the flagship of the Catholic Church, and this is because of Charles Borromeo and the reforms he adopted after the Reforming Council of Trent in the 16th century. In that particular diocese, there is another rite. It's called the Ambrosian rite. Now, there is not enough evidence to connect this rite with Saint Ambrose, who was the bishop of Milan, who was, of course, responsible for the conversion of Saint Augustine in the 4th century. And in the Ambrosian rite, Advent is quite longer and than our rite, our Advent. The Advent period consists of 6 weeks, whereas our Advent season consists of 4 weeks. And I'm going to start with the theme of Advent. And I have always mentioned this for quite a good number of years here in Orpington at Holy Innocents. And the question I'm about to ask is, what should be the dominant theme of Advent? We are going to start Advent not this Sunday coming, because this Sunday will be celebrating Christ the King. It will be in 2 weeks' time. And when we start Advent, there is the new year in the church's calendar. And throughout this year, the gospel readings are taken from Mark. This year, we have been through Matthew. And as Mark is the shortest of the 4 Gospels, the readings are supplemented by John's Gospel. Moreover, in the 3-year cycle, John is otherwise only read at certain seasons, especially in Lent and Eastertide, and in years A and C. So this year, we are going to commence on the first Sunday of Advent, is year B. So let us address this question. What should be the dominant theme of Advent? Should it focus, number one, should it focus upon the Christian hope for the final consummation of history? Namely, should it concentrate on the end of time, not end of the world? That's not biblical. End of time. The second coming of Christ, the resurrection of the dead, the last judgment, and as we read in the book of the Apocalypse, the new heaven and the new earth. So should it be focused on eschatology of the end of time? Or should it be a period of preparation for the first coming of Christ? That is to say, the incarnation, when the second person of the Trinity, God the Son, assumed human body. Or the third one, should it place us back in the period of salvation history prior to the coming of Christ? So these are the three questions. And these three motifs or features are intermingled when we look carefully at the readings. The lectionary, which means the book, where we read the first, second, and readings in the gospel, has cleared this confusion by developing the future, the end of time, the second coming of Christ, the last judgment, and the new heaven and the new earth, what we call it future eschatological theme, question 1. In the last Sundays of year A, the last 3 Sundays, the church have already been preparing us to the end of time. And if you recall, we have been given 3 parables. The parable of the wicked or faithful servant, faithful and wicked servant, the parable of the 10 bridesmaids, and this Sunday, the parable of the 10 talents, and all about accountability, these parables. And these last Sundays, this theme has been brought out, and it reaches its climax when? Not next Sunday, the celebration of Christ the King, the second coming. But the first Sunday of Advent, year B, the new year. It then allows other things: the first coming of Christ, and also the time before his coming. The preparation for the first coming of Christ to take over increasingly from the second Sunday of Advent onwards. Thus, the successive church years, year A, B, and C, the 3-year cycle, dovetail into one another. Very ingenious, the lectionary. As we draw nearer to the celebration of Christ's birth, the fulfillment of our Advent hope, Christmas. The Sunday readings, particularly the Gospels, take us to the verge of God's crossing the threshold of humanity in becoming flesh. The move from John the Baptist ministry on the second and third Sunday of Advent to the Annunciation of Jesus' birth on the fourth Sunday of Advent seems to be a step backward. I've been asked this a few times. However, this is not so, for John sums up the whole of the Old Testament prophecy and heralds the imminent coming of Christ. And Mary was the chosen agent through whom the Son of God became flesh. By unreservedly surrendering to God's salvation, she embodies the intentional disciple. She is the embodiment of a disciple, of an intentional disciple. As I have said earlier on, this year we'll be looking at Mark's gospel, which is very, very short. However, cemented by John's gospel. Now, Mark, when you read Mark is an action-packed gospel, fast-paced narrative. And his ultimate purpose and theme is to present and defend Jesus' universal call to intentional discipleship. The gospel is relevant for us, for those who are already intentional disciples. And by intentional disciples, I mean not converts, I mean followers, learners, pupils, trainees of Jesus. And Mark, despite his negative portrait of disciples, especially the chosen 12, he's not very, very kind towards them. I consider them a bit dim-witted, the 12. Mark uses the term disciple, if I remember, 46 times. And what is discipleship? Discipleship is the response to Jesus' person, and is essentially, intrinsically, being with Jesus, sharing his mission of preaching and healing, not merely following a certain code of behavior. Not that. That's not Christianity, that's not discipleship. This fellowship with Jesus, the hallmark of the disciple's life, includes, and these are my words actually, trusting him, 1, confessing him, 2, 3, observing his behavior, 4, following his teaching, 5, being shaped by a relationship with him, and 6, being prepared to follow Jesus on the way of rejection that he faced. These are the hallmarks and trappings of being a disciple. And its fresh and enthusiastic tone is also a good antidote to those whose Christian journey has become rather lukewarm because they have lost the admiration of the Christ event. So there you are. One of the challenges perhaps is to read slowly the Gospel of Mark throughout the year. Now, let us apply this teaching. How we are going to apply, how I'm living. I'm already in the Advent mode. How can I make Advent? This is the question. And it's on your handout. And how I'm going to make this Advent a time where I can maximize my discipleship. Not where I am and remain, but you can't do that. If there is no progress in discipleship, there is only regression. We are being challenged to be disciples. A disciple of Christ is a disciple full of enterprise, enthusiasm, no timidity. And that's the features of being a disciple. So how can I make Advent a time of deep growth in my discipleship? Let us take Mary, our blessed mother. Mary's Advent, her waiting for baby Jesus, can be taken as a paradigm model for our waiting for this second coming of the Lord. However, the second coming of the Lord is imminent, not immediate, imminent. But it could happen to me. I could meet the Lord tonight. But how can I do? How can I look forward to meeting him? To intensify my desire and be ready for God's action in our lives, in my life, in your lives. So this is the first challenge for you and for me. This is my reflection, personal reflections, how can I increase my discipleship this Advent? So waiting is not wasting. I always say. A mother who is pregnant is not wasting her time. She continues to do her work, but looking forward in joyful anticipation to the birth of her baby, son or daughter. But waiting requires awareness or consciousness of what one is waiting for. What is hindering here and now? What is hindering me here and now? What the Holy Spirit wants to do in me during Advent? What are your hindrances? What are my hindrances? And I suggest this, something practical. Write down one hindrance. Keep revisiting this during Advent, not when you think, how I'm dealing with this hindrance, which is an obstacle for the life of the Spirit in me. 2, waiting, a time of expectation, is also requires prayer and desire. Am I content here and now with the depth of my prayer and the time I give to prayer daily? I discussed this with my spiritual director lately, that I need to intensify the depth of my prayer life, intensify it, so much so that during Advent I'll be on retreat for 3 days in a Benedictine, with the Benedictines in Worth Abbey. Intensify. Not happy at this moment in time. So maximize. Be better. Let us stretch ourselves like a student who wants to be better. We need to be stretched. And third, in her waiting time, Mary forgot about her own needs and went to visit and help her cousin, Elizabeth, pregnant as well, but much older woman. So what can I do for others during Advent? What can you do? What can I do for others? Please address the questions, and these are practical questions. My dear friends, Christmas comes and goes, and we'll be singing those lovely carols, and we'll be celebrating the birth of Christ. But the birth of Christ will certainly remain a historical event unless we allow him to be born in us. 25th of December should be a joyous celebration for each one of us. Because I could say, and you could say, yes, I've had this hindrance. And with the help of the Holy Spirit, I've now moved on. And I can say, yes, a child is being born unto me today. God bless you and enjoy your meeting. Thank you.